Is my right honourable friend aware, and I in no way question his integrity, that for some of us, the heart of this issue is simply this: did security officials, British security officials, know that torture was being applied against Mr. Mohammed by the US? And if, in fact, no action was taken by us, and no information given to ministers, I consider that to be a stain on the reputation of our country. It should never happen again. It's not simply good enough, Mr. Speaker, to say that Britain is not a party to torture. If, in fact, we know that torture is being carried out by our closest ally, we have a responsibility to act. And I'm afraid that in the case of Mr. Mohammed, we didn't do so.
Mr. Speaker, my right-honourable friend is absolutely right. That we do not just have responsibilities in respect of our own conduct for our own officials, but we also have responsibilities if we come to know that torture or cruel or inhuman treatment is being undertaken by others with whom we work. And we have responsibilities to act when we have that information, and we should do so. There is a criminal case being studied at the moment to see whether or not the actions were taken in accord with the principles that he and I and the whole House shares. And that is the way in which the system should work, and that is the way in which the system is working. I can also say that for all the talk of lessons, which is right, there have been significant changes since 2002 in the way in which guidance is offered to all officers, in the way in which they are trained, and in which the way in which the system is patrolled and policed. And that is also, and that is absolutely right. In respect of what happened at the time, it is in front of our police at the moment, and will, if they proceed to charges, go in front of the courts to find out exactly what did happen in this particular individual case.
Dr. Julian Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. According to the great theorist of counterinsurgency, Sir Robert Thompson, over 40 years ago, prisoner abuse is not only morally wrong, it's lethal to any counterinsurgency campaign. I appreciate that the Foreign Secretary cannot or doesn't wish to comment on the particular case that's currently before the courts, but in response to the Honourable Gentleman for Kingston and Surbiton, can he address the question of what representations the government made to our American allies more generally when it became known that waterboarding, for example, was being used?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm very happy to say very clearly that the government, as detailed in the successive Intelligence and Security Committee reports, did follow up, both in terms of our own system, the way in which the practices were taken forward. It also, in ways which I think I should set out for him in a letter, and I'd be very happy to do that, what happened. It's also documented what didn't happen and what should have happened, not in respect of an individual case, but in respect, for example, of training and guidance for officials. That means we are in a much stronger position today than we were in 2001, 2002, and that's right, but we always keep these under review, and I think the publication of the current guidance, which is currently in front of the ISC, will be an important occasion for not just the whole House, but the whole country to see the way in which that is taken forward.
Mr. Keith Vaz.
Can I join with him and others in congratulating the security services on their professionalism, but can I take him back to the police investigation? I wrote on behalf of the Select Committee a year ago to the Attorney General about this matter. She referred this to the police. Is it right that this has been ongoing for a whole year? If it has been ongoing for a whole year, could we now expect an update from the police as to when these investigations will be drawn to a conclusion?
No, Mr. Speaker, I'm afraid there's a very short answer to that. It is not for the police to provide a running commentary on their investigations. They have to continue them until they're concluded, and when they're concluded, they make a decision. I understand that when the case was in front of the Attorney General, my right honourable friend made representations for her to speed up her work. She did conclude that work, and it's now in front of the police, but I can't give him any joy about the running commentary that the police might provide.
Mr. Douglas Hogg.
Mr. Speaker, the Foreign Secretary's statement makes it plain that in 2002, and whilst in United States custody, Mr. Binyamin Mohammed was subjected to systematic maltreatment, probably amounting to torture. Can he tell the House when the government first learnt of those facts? At what level in government were those facts known? What steps were taken to make urgent representations to the United States government that this must stop? what steps was taken to prevent extraordinary rendition being practiced, which we were a party? And was not the concealment of this document very damaging to Mr. Mohammed's claim for civil damages?
Order, I do recognise the rhetorical technique that the Right Honourable Learned Gentleman was deploying, but unless my arithmetic failed me, I counted 6 questions to which one answer will suffice. Foreign Secretary. Not at all. Foreign Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, I think the best way I can answer the legitimate questions that the Right Honourable Gentleman has is to detail for him what has in fact been reported through the ISC about what the government knew when it and what action it took. I do want to say one thing to him, to answer one of the questions, that it was the actions of the government as recorded in the divisional court, that got the documents to Mr. Mohammed's legal counsel. That's why the constant confusion between the quote-unquote suppression of evidence as regards Mr. Mohammed and the publication of the evidence is so damaging. It was at the heart of the government's case that we had a responsibility to ensure Mr. Mohammed was able to defend himself. And that's why we made representations to the US authorities, and that's why the divisional court effectively congratulated the government on achieving that. That is not the same as publishing the documents into the public domain. One concerns justice for the individual, the other concerns the public interest in open debate. But I will give him a detailed explanation of the other questions that he asked.
Darry Taylor.
Mr. Speaker, in thanking my right honourable friend for his statement to the House this afternoon and for making it clear to everybody once again that torture or complicity with torture is totally unacceptable, could I add to that a thank you for the statement he made about the work of the Intelligence and Security Committee, a committee on which I sit. I believe it scrutinises the security agencies forcefully and purposefully. But could I also now ask him the question, because it's crucial for all of us, is there going to be a watching brief on the way in which intelligence sharing between Britain and the UK is going to continue? I ask that question because it's important for all of us to acknowledge that that relationship is crucial to Great Britain's future security.
Mr. Speaker, my honourable friend is right. There will be a taking stock, as I set out in my statement. We will seek to ensure that the full intelligence sharing that's so vital to both of our countries continues unabated, but there is no point in denying that there will be a taking stock as a result of this judgment.
Mr. Andrew Tyree.
Secretary said that our most basic values as a nation are at stake here. I agree. It's only by getting to the truth about all this that we can bring closure to the whole sorry episode that is now called extraordinary rendition, in which the UK appears to have allowed itself to become complicit in kidnap and torture. Indeed, a judge in another case said that we had facilitated a rendition. So the issue of facilitation in principle is no longer in doubt. Given all that, will the Foreign Secretary now finally discuss with the Prime Minister the need for a judge-led inquiry, which is supported by Lord Carlisle, the government's own anti-terrorism watchdog, which was supported by the Leader of the Opposition and by the Liberal Party, as well as many others?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm interested to hear that the Leader of the Opposition is recommitting himself to a judicial inquiry, and I'll pursue inquiries with the Opposition front bench to see if that is the case. Mr. Speaker, inside government we have discussed whether or not a judicial inquiry would be right, and we have concluded it would not be right. It would not be right, not least because the judicial system in this country is performing a very effective function in the courts, which is where it belongs. I also want to put on record that there is a dangerous confusion emerging between rendition, sometimes called extraordinary rendition, and torture. Those are not the same things, although both of them are reprehensible. Both of them are reprehensible and are quite contrary to the laws and to the spirit of this country. But it's important that we don't confuse the two. In Mr. Mohammed's case, there are allegations that he was subject to both. But they are not the same, they are separate. They're both wrong, and they both need to be addressed fully. However, in respect of his main point, I do not think that the conclusion to be drawn from today's events is that a judicial inquiry is necessary. The conclusion I draw is that the judiciary are performing their function extremely vigilantly.
Mr. Jeremy Corbyn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Could I take the Foreign Secretary back to the question of Mr. Benjamin Mohammed and what happened to him in 2002 in Pakistan? When did the British government know about it? What protests have been made? And are they satisfied that there is not a continuation of this practice either in Pakistan or in other places where the US takes prisoners ultimately to some other destination? And does he not think that Guantanamo Bay should have been closed many years ago and that we should have done much more to close it?
I think the Honourable Member for Islington North is seeking to imitate the Right Honourable Learned Gentleman Member for Sleaford and North Hykeham. There was a quartet there, but again, one answer from the Foreign Secretary will suffice.
Mr. Speaker, yes, the government has stood out against Guantanamo Bay for a very long time, but it is also a fact that the current